think we're just about ready to begin. Good afternoon / evening, everybody. Good evening. Judging from the energy in this room, there's excitement and passion for the gentleman who's pictured behind me throughout the evening. How about an applause for Congressman Eliot Engel? People are standing, there's no reason not to. Thank you very much. There was a part of me that wanted you to just keep going, but I guess we do have a long agenda and many dignitaries here, and certainly the level of aristocracy in the room is beyond impressive, and that tells you something about Eliot Engel. I'm going to give you some very basic facts, and everybody really knows this stuff anyway. He graduated from Lehman College, this institution. Yes, you certainly applause. And that would mean that I have something in common with Congressman Engel, because I did too. Member of the New York State Assembly from 1977 to 1988, a 16-term Congress member from 1989 to 2021. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Gary Axelbank. I am the host of Bronx Talk on BronxNet Television, and I have been the host of that program for more than 3 decades, which I'm quite proud of, and my friends and colleagues from BronxNet are here, and they're carrying this event live. So how about a nice round of applause for BronxNet Television. I also host the Bronx Music Podcast. We're always out there celebrating our beautiful borough of the Bronx. Congressman Engel was on Bronx Talk 13 times, and that starts to give you a clue as to the kind of elected leader he was. You had a question, he'd come on and answer. He talked politics, community issues, the war in Iraq, aftermath of 9/11, healthcare reform, gun incidents, the economy, and he debated on our program twice. So if you want a characterization of the kind of leader he was, that certainly gives you a clue. I'm going to tell you 2 quick stories that will give you further insight. It's all about me. I was on WWRL for one afternoon. I filled in for somebody, and we were taking phone calls from listeners and everything. And all of a sudden, they whispered in my ear, Gary, Congressman Engel is on the phone. And I hadn't expected it. I hadn't set it up or anything like that. And he told me that he heard that I was on the radio, and just to be kind, just to be nice, and because he appreciated the dialogue that we've had, he phoned in. And it was impressive for me, and I will never forget that he did that. It was something really unique and extraordinary. And the last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to bring on some very important people. After I had lived in his district for many years, and then he was redistricted out of my district, my mom had a problem getting her veterans benefits, or the veterans benefits that my father earned, and she was not able to get them, and she was getting older. And Congressman Eliot Engel volunteered, even though I was no longer in his district and no longer his constituent, to get his constituent services together, and ultimately we got the benefits. That's the kind of man it was. I realize this is not the most dramatic thing he did, but this is the kind of human being and kind of elected official he was. To continue along with somebody who knew him a heck of a lot better than I did, how about a nice round of applause for Julia Engel, who is Eliot Engel's daughter, and she will welcome you on behalf of the Engel family.
Hello. Good evening. On behalf of myself, my mom, Pat, my brothers, Jonathan and Philip, and my father's sister, my Aunt Dory, welcome to Lehman College, where Dad received both his bachelor's and his master's, as well as an honorary doctorate, and in addition, where he taught political science as an adjunct professor. So we felt it quite fitting to host you all here today at Lehman. And I want to thank you all so much for being here, both in person and virtually online. And I do mean all of you, because my father would have loved this. A room full of people he admired, people he fought alongside, people he argued with, and people he loved. He would have wanted to shake every hand, every single hand in this room. And knowing him, he would have found a way to do it. To most of you, I'm Congressman Engel's daughter, but to Dad, he'd say I was the one who made him a father. He'd say I was his one and only daughter. He'd say a daddy and a daughter are something special. And he'd say that he named me after his grandma Julia, who lived with and helped to raise him. And standing here today, trying to put into words what my father meant to me, to our family, and to the people and causes he devoted his life to, feels like one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Dad grew up in NYCHA housing. My grandpa Phil was an iron worker, strong on the outside, but a goofy sap on the inside, who instilled in Dad an absolute devotion of unions. My grandma Soroy, her stage name, as she would say, was a woman whose strength, tenacity, and moral compass he inherited. Family was everything to my father. His grandparents were Ukrainian Jews who arrived with almost nothing and settled into the Bronx, where now 5 generations of my family have called home. Dad never forgot where he came from. He talked about it constantly, at the dinner table, at town halls, to literally anyone who would listen. He's even quoted in an interview saying, "I was a little boy growing up in the Bronx from a working class family, and I could only dream that one day I'd go to a State of the Union and shake the president's hand." And true to Dad's spirit, he didn't just go, he made it his personal tradition for nearly 3 decades. I could tell you so many stories. For example, Dad had a habit of taking off his glasses to read, and he would mindlessly put them down somewhere, walk away, and inevitably shout throughout our townhouse in Co-op City, $5 to the kid who finds my glasses first, turning his absolute horrid eyesight into a fun game. And when we found them, triumphantly, the ironic thing, he would say, the ironic thing about losing your glasses is that you need them to find your glasses. Some of you may know that Dad started out as a teacher and guidance counselor in New York City public school system. I think that job shaped him more than any committee chairmanship ever did. He knew how to listen. He knew how to look a young person in the eye and make them feel like they mattered. He even taught himself Spanish to better communicate with the kids. Dad saw the world through the eyes of people who had no one fighting for them. And he brought that into every room he entered, from Capitol Hill to the Middle East, to the Balkans, to the Western Hemisphere, Cyprus, Ireland, Myanmar, a senior citizen or school in the Bronx, a senior citizen center or school in the district, whether it was a hearing on health care or a quiet conversation with a constituent who just needed someone to care. Dad considered his political career to have started in college, where he was president of his fraternity, Pi Lambda Phi. He was active in his teachers' union. Then he ran for district leader. Next came the assembly in a special election where he served for 12 years, and it was during that time he decided to marry his best friend, Pat, without whom he could never make a decision, start a family, and go to law school part-time. I went to law school, I can't even imagine all of that at once. And finally, 32 glorious years, as he called them, in Congress, which he considered one of the crowning achievements of his life. But to my brothers and me, he was just Dad. My brother Philip reminded me yesterday that when Dad would speak at a holiday party or other event, he would routinely list the elected officials in attendance and staff and thank them. But he would always preface by saying, "Please forgive me if I leave anyone out." So borrowing from my dad, I would like to thank my dad's best friends, Arnie, Bill, Harry, Jeff, and John. Words cannot express how much Dad loved you, relied on you, and how much you shaped who he was and what you all accomplished together. My mother, my brothers, and I are such proud beneficiaries of the love you have for each other. A public political life is very hard on a family, but somehow Dad managed to take that and make a generational impact by adding so many chosen family members to our family. Thank you for endlessly showing up for Dad and for me and my family. I don't think I ate a single meal on my own in the days and the weeks after my father's passing. Thanks to you and your families. I keep thinking about what Dad said once in an interview when asked why he sat on that aisle year after year. He said his constituents loved it, and that if they didn't see him on TV shaking the president's hand, they'd think he was sick. That was my father in a nutshell. A man who measured his success not by power or prestige, but by whether the people back home felt like somebody was showing up for them. Dad, we will never stop being proud of the man who sat in that seat for 12 hours, reached out his hand, not because the cameras were rolling, but because he genuinely believed that shaking the president's hand was the most extraordinary thing a working-class kid from the Bronx could ever do, even after 44 years in elected office. I love you, Dad. We all love you. And I know that wherever you are right now, you've already found the best seat in the House.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you to the whole Engel family. The next two speakers will be religious leaders. The senior pastor of the Mount Vernon Heights Congregational Church is Bishop Troy DeCone. Bishop DeCone, I saw him earlier. Here he is. Okay, now a round of applause, please, for Bishop Troy.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a great day this is when so many of us are able to gather together to pay tribute to a man for his life work and legacy. We thank God for the Engel family, for sharing your father, your husband, for sharing your uncle and your good friend, for sharing him with our communities for all of these years. He served 32 years Congress. I was with him for about 25 of his 32 and worked with him to address many issues within community, but then also within policy. And I thank God for Congressman Engel, for his effort, for his love, for his friendship that he shared with me throughout all these years. So I would love for us just to reflect in prayer. And we ask, Heavenly Father, we come together today to honor the life and public service of Congressman Eliot Engel. We thank you for the gifts, dedication, and passion he brought to our community, and not just to our local community, but to the nation. We recognize that leadership is a profound responsibility, and I wish we had leaders in this present time who understood that is based on profound responsibility. We thank you for the times he championed justice, and not just justice, but he had championed also social justice, for everybody to be included. For everyone to be recognized. That was Congressman Eliot Engel. That was my friend. We thank you for the times that he sought the welfare of local community. How many people have received lights turned on in their homes because of his work to build a better future, not just for the greatest, but for the least. We pray at this time now for the family, for the loved ones. Grant them comfort in their sorrow in the absence of Congressman Engel, and assurance we seek you for your sustaining presence as we remember this great man for the work, for his legacy, and for that which he inspired us to work together with integrity, passion, and renewed commitment to champion good work. We thank you for sharing him with us, and your family for you sharing him with us. And for all who wish to join, just say amen.
Our next speaker is the chairman of the Zionist Rabbinic Coalition. He worked with the congressman in Washington. Maybe most important, Rabbi Stuart Weinblatt was Congressman Engel's spiritual advisor. Rabbi?
Our tradition, the Torah, says of Moses that he was the most humble and the most modest of men. And if that's the case, Eliot Engel was surely the most modest and humble of individuals to serve in the United States Congress. I say that my son happened to work for Eliot as an intern one summer. And when he came home and he said to me, "Dad, I think Eliot is too nice to be a member of Congress." It's a true story. It is why he was so modest, and I hope it's okay for me to say this, that he didn't need to speak in front of a microphone, to grab attention, to speak in front of a crowd, and that was why something that he said was taken out of context and was distorted and was used maliciously to hurt him, and I think you know what I'm referring to. He recognized that he had an opportunity to serve this country. I first met Eliot when he was first running for the United States Congress, and I happened to be starting a synagogue in Potomac, Maryland. And so we sat next to each other at a dinner and immediately struck up a friendship. Now, Eliot was always very, very punctilious to make sure that he paid his synagogue dues. In fact, I want you to know, one time I came to his office, it's a true story, I came to his office, and he said to me, "Here, Rabbi Weinblatt, I want to pay my dues." And next thing I know, he says, "I don't have a check." He pulls out his wallet, and he starts to give me cash. I said to him, "Usually it's supposed to be the other way around. And I certainly hope there aren't any cameras here." But Congressman Eliot Engel used the unique opportunity that he had to serve people because he loved people. And much of what he did was informed by his tradition, by his parents, by his family, who gave him such a wonderful love of Judaism and of the principles and ideals and ideas of our people. And so he recognized that he had the opportunity, a rare opportunity, to play a significant role in the most important and exciting enterprise of the Jewish people in 2,000 years, and that was the State of Israel. It was always dear to his heart. It was always something that he realized was consistent with his American values, with his liberal values, with his progressive values, and talking about things that we need more of today. That's something that we need much more of today as well, to recognize that. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the first time he was ever elected was on the Liberal Party line. And so those values, to want to make the world a better place, what we in Judaism call tikkun olam, our responsibility to make the world a better place, guided everything that he did. And it also guided and informed the many pieces of legislation he worked for, the people that he sought to help, and of course, his advocacy for the people, the state, and the land of Israel. We miss him greatly. Let us hope and pray that his memory will be for a blessing, and that there will be those who will understand and carry on his legacy, for truly he was a humble servant of God, of this nation, and of this people. Thank you.
Our next speaker is the Imam for the New York City Police Department. So please let me welcome Imam Eden Jonai.
Good evening, everyone. Today we gather to remember a man who devoted his life to public service, to justice, and to the defense of human dignity wherever it was threatened. His passing is felt deeply by many, but perhaps by none more profoundly than the Albanian community, which mourns the loss of a sincere friend and strong ally. We remember with enduring gratitude his courageous support for the sovereignty and freedom of Kosovo during some of its most defining and dangerous hours. Eliot Engel understood that the struggle of the people of Kosovo was not merely a matter of geopolitics, but a profoundly human cause, a struggle for dignity, for peace, for the elementary right to live in freedom and without fear. When others hesitated, he did not. When others looked away, his gaze remained steady and his voice remained strong. We are also honored today by the presence of President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Senator Chuck Schumer, who is about to come, whose friendship and support for the Albanian community have always been deeply appreciated. Their names hold a special place in the heart of Albanians everywhere. But today, we gather especially to honor their friend and ours, Eliot Engel. When I heard of his passing from Harry Bayraktari, I felt the grief in his words immediately. Harry had considered Engel his dear friend, and through that friendship had become a bridge between a great American statesman and the Albanian people. I am grateful to Harry for that bridge and for the honor of standing here today. Congressman Engel visited Montenegro, and he came to my hometown, Ulqin, a small, predominantly Albanian city where many histories and traditions meet. Within the walls of its old citadel, lives the memory of Shabbatai Tzvi, the 17th century Jewish mystic who spent his final years there in exile and whose presence became part of the layered soul of my city. Congressman Engel appreciated that spirit. He took the time to meet people, to listen, to understand. That sincerity left a everlasting impression on all of who encountered him. Upon learning of his passing, I found myself in Ulqin last April, looking out at the Adriatic Sea, and an image came to me, boats upon the water, each one tracing a fleeting trail before dissolving into the vastness. We are all boats upon the sea of life. We sail for a time given to us not by chance, but by providence. We navigate as best as we can toward goodness, toward justice, toward one another. And when the time comes, we return to our Creator, to the final harbor, when He, in His wisdom, decided so. We take with us our faith and our deeds, but we leave behind something precious, memories. Memories, what we bequeath to those who remain on the water of life, still sailing, still trying. Eliot Engel left behind a beautiful memory. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, once said, "Whoever is grateful to people, he's grateful to God." By this measure, we Albanians owe Eliot Engel a profound and lasting gratitude for his friendship, for his voice, for the sincerity with which he felt our joys and our wounds as though they were his own. Thank you. Thank you, Eliot. He did not champion our cause from a distance. He stood beside us. He spoke for us when our own voices could not reach the halls of power. And now, like those boats upon the Adriatic Sea, Eliot Engel has passed from presence into memory. But what a memory he has left, bright, enduring, a trail of light upon the water that does not fade. For all of this, we, the Albanian people, when we speak his name, should say with the full hearts the words of his ancient tradition, Zichrono livracha. May his memory be a blessing. And it is, and it will be. For as long as we remember what it means to stand for justice, to speak for the voiceless, and to cross every boundary of nation and faith in the service of human dignity, Eliot Engel will live among us. May he rest in the peace he worked so hard to bring to others. Amen.
Before I introduce our next guests, I hope everybody's enjoying the photo show. Yeah, at each photo I say, oh yes, of course, that, yes, of course. Anyway, our next two guests, I was trying to think of how to introduce them, and I really have no other way of introducing them other than saying, ladies and gentlemen, President Bill Clinton and Secretary Hillary Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I wish I could say all the things I'm thinking. Thank you, Gary, for the introduction. Thank you, Pat, Julia, Jonathan, Philip, Eliot's whole family, including grandchildren. We think they now are the most important people on earth, that we have some. I want to say just a few words about a man who was, when I was president, my steadfast ally, and who truly introduced me to the Bronx. I mean, keep in mind, I was a redneck from Arkansas. Nobody thought, I didn't know that I didn't need a passport to go to the Bronx. I had no idea. All I knew is I'd always been fascinated by it. And I remember meeting Eliot and asking him if I could ever go to Co-op City. You got to understand, that's like going to outer space if you're from rural Arkansas. But my whole campaign in 1992 was that we should stop demonizing each other and reach out across every divide. And that our common humanity was more important than our interesting differences. Sounds pretty familiar today. But that whole deal was already going on, and I thought to myself, I'll bet you this community is just as family-oriented and community-oriented as anyone I've ever been in. And so I have Eliot to thank for that. He hauled me to Co-op City. He stood up and vouched for me. He made my life a lot easier when I was president. Everybody can say when we repealed trickle-down economics by one vote that they saved my presidency. But Eliot did. The more important thing was he proved that trickle-down economics was not the best way to run a country, that it was better to build from the bottom up and the middle out and take advantage of everyone. He did that when he voted for the ban on assault weapons, limit on ammunition clips for the Brady Bill, giving us the lowest murder rate in 30 years, something that the other side likes to forget. Eliot never forgot it. One thing I liked about him was he was a touchy-feely, hands-on, emotional congressman who kept the numbers in his head. He always knew what the score was. And so I thank him for that. Because of my Irish roots, I also have to say that he made sure that I knew that Woodlawn Heights was the Bronx's little Ireland. And so he supported the peace process in Northern Ireland and the Good Friday Accord. And I would look at him and I'd say, he said, no, I really have I know what I'm talking about. Sure enough, he did. As you have already heard, Kosovo never had a better friend in Congress. It all sounds so straightforward now. A majority of the American people were against Eliot Engel's position when we started. They thought, oh, look at how much trouble we had to go to just to stop what happened in Bosnia and how late we were and it wasn't working. This is not going to be a good thing. And Eliot Engel was one of the few people who believed that we could win a conflict with the use of air power only if the people on the ground were overwhelmingly on our side. That may seem, that's not an abstract article. It was an article of faith among our military that you could not win any sort of politically significant conflict without boots on the ground. And I believed otherwise, and so did Eliot. And we took the ride. And all these Kosovars here are important. And Governor, I know you know this, but I'm so proud that New York has the largest number of Albanians in the world outside of Kosovo and Albania. So, for as long as I live, I will be proud that I knew and worked with and stood by and was supported by Eliot Engel. I admired him, and I thank God for his life, for his service. May his memory always be a blessing, and his spirit always inspire the rest of us. Because one of the things that I liked is he proved you could be tough and really nice. And we can all laugh about that. But this is the only thing I want to say about what we're going through now. I wish we had a 35 or 40-year-old Eliot Engel out there digging in the ground with us. And he would say, keep being nice, but be strong. Be of good cheer. And never give up, never give in. That's what he did. I'd like to turn it over to a more recent and believable authority on the subject than me.
Thank you all. It is so great to be here for such an important and worthy event, and I want to thank Pat and the entire family for giving all of us a chance to share a few memories and say a few words about someone whom we admired and had such great affection for. I really want to add to Bill's comments because I had the privilege of working with Eliot as First Lady, as Senator, and as Secretary of State. He was by my side when I announced my first campaign for the Senate. He was with me in every campaign after. He was a very wise and steadfast advisor. He was someone who you could always count on to be there and, frankly, to tell you what he thought, but in a nice way. And you know, he was always there across 3 decades in Washington and for New York, fighting for the people and the causes that he believed in and represented. You know, as we worked to pass the Violence Against Women Act in the 90s, Eliot was there. When we worked to pass the Children's Health Insurance Program, Eliot was there. He understood that the work of government is in large part supposed to be about taking care of people, about giving people the chance to live up to their own potential, about trying to create an environment in which people feel respected and seen, in which their dignity is just accepted as the norm. It was about protecting the most vulnerable among us and making sure that everybody's voice would be heard. You know, when we were attacked on 9/11 and the city and country was so vulnerable, Eliot was there, standing up for New Yorkers, standing in the rubble of Lower Manhattan after 9/11. We mourned together, and then we got to work to fight together to get the resources and the support we needed to rebuild. Eliot helped to lead that effort in the House from day one. We worked side by side to secure the billions in aid that New York needed after 9/11. We worked side by side to come up with the programs to secure the help that was needed for first responders and others who ran toward danger, who were there on the pile day after day, breathing that toxic air. We worked together to help small businesses survive, and we worked together to provide some small amount of financial support for families who had suffered unimaginable losses. You know, he led the effort over the decade, certainly after I left the Senate to become Secretary of State, when we were still fighting to make sure that the healthcare aid continued. Eliot was always on the front lines. And when I was Secretary of State, having him as a leading member on the Foreign Affairs Committee and as my partner made the job easier. Eliot understood, just almost instinctually, deep in his heart, that politics should stop at the water's edge. He was a fair and kind man who would rather talk about the hard work of rebuilding Lower Manhattan or helping Kosovar Albanians than the gotcha question that someone was holding up a phone to record the answer. He really believed that America was at its best when we acted and spoke with moral clarity and purpose. And because of that, he forged relationships across all kinds of divides. He championed human rights around the world. He authored landmark legislation to hold the Assad regime in Syria accountable for its atrocities. He created what became known as the Engel List to identify and punish anti-democratic actors in Central America. He fought against child labor and forced labor because he really did believe human dignity was universal, whether here in the Bronx or anywhere else in the world. And he understood that human rights and democracy are inseparable from America's strength and security in our foreign policy. His legacy is strong because he stood for values that don't just go back and forth in the wind of politics, but are rooted in common ground about what it means to be an American, what our values should be. His legacy is rooted in the millions of lives that he helped to save at home and abroad. It's rooted in the kind of national security that makes sense. It's the tens of millions of children who've had access to quality, affordable health care, and women who were victims of domestic violence who found a safe place for refuge. His strength and resilience really stood out despite the challenges of a political life. And I was thinking as Bill was speaking that, we're living in a political era that rewards division and spectacle. It rewards performance over productivity. It rewards the likes on social media instead of the realities in lives. Eliot believed in public service, and through every chapter of his life, he embodied what a public servant should be. The love and concern that he had for his family was, as we heard, manifest in the love that he felt for his constituents. People counted on Eliot Engel through good times and bad. I want to thank him for his leadership, for his service, for his courage in standing up, oftentimes when he was the first, if not the loneliest voice in doing so. And I want to thank him for his friendship over so many years. Farewell, my friend.
The President and Hillary Clinton. Their presence here is so important and so instructive about Eliot Engel and who he was and what he did. We do have many people who will not get an opportunity to speak, and elected officials, and we want to recognize them, so you can stand and wave when I call your name. Assembly member from New York's 86th Assembly District, Udelka Tapia. She's here somewhere. Thank you. Representative Nydia Velasquez is here. I saw her earlier. Representative Greg Meeks is here. There he is. Thank you, sir. People in the Bronx certainly know former Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. There he is. Thank you. Sitting right next to his father, the very distinguishable former state senator Ruben Diaz Sr. From the town of Greenburgh is Ellen Hendricks. Somewhere, there we are. And the other one on my list right now is Representative Grace Meng. So where is Congressmember Meng? We'll move right along with our program, and as I said, there's aristocracy all throughout the room, and she is the #1 citizen in New York State. It is time to introduce New York State Governor Kathy Hochul.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Nothing like following the New York's power couple, in fact, America's power couple. But I've never seen a power couple use their power for the empowerment of others. and that is your legacy. And I'm so proud to call you New Yorkers, but also to have followed your careers so closely and emulate you in many, many ways. So, Mr. President, Madam Secretary, it's an honor to have both of you here. All the electeds who've been acknowledged here as well, all of my former colleagues in Congress, as well as Speaker Heastie from the Bronx and Leader Stewart Cousins are here as well. I want to acknowledge them. You know, my team always gives me great speeches. And I used to write speeches for Senator Moynihan a long time ago, and he used to take them and just tear them up and say what he wanted. So I feel like I can do the same. But I was thinking about, when Julie was speaking, about Eliot always making sure he had that seat on the aisle. I remember I was brand new to Congress. Wasn't supposed to get there. In fact, I think Carolyn Maloney's here, was my roommate, because I was never going to win a seat as a Democrat in the most conservative state in New York, or district in New York. But I won that seat, and it was my first State of the Union. Like, well, what do I do? What's the protocol? Whatever you do, do not get in Eliot Engel's way, okay? So he embraced me as part of the family. All of my friends in Congress who were there at the time know that this is important. You have to get sort of initiated into the New York delegation. And, you know, they're looking at me because they've never had anybody from my part of the state. And Eliot brought me to the Bronx. And I think he was trying to test me to see whether or not I was tough enough to handle the rough and tumble politics here. And certainly, again, when I was running for lieutenant governor in 2014, he was also testing me. And I said, listen, Eliot, I'm from Buffalo. I can handle anything as well. So bring on the Bronx. These are my people. And so we just had the most wonderful conversations. And I thank his staff who are here, because once you fall in love with a boss, that you never lose that sense of loyalty. And I want to thank all the people who served Eliot over many years. But you know, 44 years in public life. But also there's people behind that story, not just people in his district, but the people who gave him the roots so he could spread his wings literally around the world. And that is Pat, his life partner of 46 years of marriage tomorrow, your anniversary. And to Julia and Jonathan and Philip and grandchildren and nephews heading into the political world. Where's the nephew who's going back to oh, there you go. He's got to get on a plane tomorrow to help us win Texas. All right, get out right now. Get out. Go. So what you did was you created an understanding in your own family, the responsibility that each one of us have as citizens of this great country, our responsibility to preserve it and fight for it, literally to fight for democracy and to support other candidates. So Pat was telling me about the political powerhouse with the Dinowitzes that you created here in the Bronx many, many decades ago. But now you can see that the seeds of that are still being spread to the other people, that your stories, your work, your advocacy on behalf of democratic values have led to another generation and beyond of people stepping into the arena. And I'm proud to have called him a friend. And hearing the stories again is just a reminder of how great the loss is. An extraordinary person who is called to public service for the right reasons, And yes, Gary, tracking down someone's veterans check or taking care of those local issues, that's what it's all about. Politics has one purpose, and that is to do good for others, to let them believe that government has a purpose that's looking out for them, not ourselves, not our own egos. And to be governor of the state of New York, I deal with a lot of egos. But I also know when I see the good people, the ones who are doing it for the right reasons. So I think about what he did around the world. You heard from no greater authorities than the former president and the former secretary who witnessed his compassion for people all over the world. People he'd never meet again, but he took his journey there and his platform as the chair and ranking member of Foreign Affairs to talk about democratic values to other places. Because there was a time, and I hope to get back to that time soon, when we are the envy of the world when it came to protecting rights. And we will get there, my friends. Do not give up on us. We will get back there. So, Eliot, I could tell lots of stories, but a lot of people wanted to share their stories about you. But I remember going back to the days as that freshman who didn't know anybody. You sat next to me. You kind of told me the ropes in Congress. You said I was going to be okay. And watching you thinking that someday I could be like Eliot Engel, was something I aspire to. And in his life, now in his death, know this, that I'll always continue to aspire to be the kind of person, the kind of leader, the kind of political leader that our country so desperately needs. Eliot, may your memory be a blessing. I know it will be. And you have touched the lives of so many people, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you very much, everyone. And I've got a little problem called a railroad strike. Got to get back to that, everybody, but wish me luck.
Boy, it's hard not to be inspired, right? There are a couple of elected officials we missed, and we certainly want to recognize everybody. Assemblymember Amy Poland is here, so thank you, Assemblymember. And also the Westchester County Legislator, Tyree Woodson Samuels, is here. It is my pleasure to introduce somebody I know very well. He's the Assembly member of the 83rd Assembly District in the Bronx. We know him as the Assembly Speaker. It is Carl Hastie.
So first, let me express my deepest condolences to the Engel family. And after Eliot had passed, Bill called me and we talked, and he reminded me of one of my favorite stories that I like to say about Congressman Engel, so I'm going to share it with all of you once again. I was younger in elementary school, not knowing really much about politics and who politicians were and elected officials, but I was a pretty good student in school, and the first award that I ever got from elected official was from Eliot Engel. Now, we could say, yes, give a round of applause for that. We could say that he may have inspired me to be a politician, but it didn't help me in elementary school because every time I ran for office, I lost so bad I wasn't even sure I voted for myself. But it was always an incredible relationship that I had with the congressman. I said, even in sometimes we weren't on the same political side, but I got to tell you, when we were on the same political side, there was no more loyal, genuine, even through the toughest part, I'd say, of his career, at least that I witnessed, after he lost, he called me and he thanked me for, sticking with him. And I said, Congressman, it was my pleasure and an honor to do that because of what I felt like he had done to the same community that we had represented for so many years. The job of elected official is to show up. And I would say he always got an A. He always showed up. Whenever I went to an event, I'd always turn around and the congressman was there. I even went to Israel, and I turned around and the congressman was there. So I only have just the best memories of my relationship with Congressman Engel. Everyone should aspire to be a representative like Congressman Engel. You care about the people, you care about the issues, you solve people's problems, and you show up. And so for that, it was my absolute honor, pleasure, and privilege to call Eliot Engel not only a colleague, but my dear friend. May his soul rest in peace.
There are, I'm going to continue with dignitaries. There are many here. The Bronx District Attorney is here, Darcel Clark. There she is. And also the chair of the Westchester County Legislature is Verdat Gashi. I want to bring up two leaders from the New York State Senate. The majority leader of the New York State Senate is Andrea Stewart Cousins, and locally people know Senator Jamal Bailey of the 36th Senatorial District.
It's so good to see so many wonderful people who have come to pay their respects to an extraordinary public servant. I listen to the stories, and I'm kind of jealous because I wasn't in Congress with Eliot. I wasn't in the state legislature with Eliot. I didn't even live in the Bronx. But I did. I was a Bronx girl. But I moved to Westchester. But Eliot and I shared a lot of things in common. We both went to Evander. Anybody Evander? And spent some time right here in Lehman. We both taught. We both found ourselves in politics. And although I did not work side by side with him, I knew that I could always work side by side with him. He was a man who was full of heart, compassion, wisdom, and I certainly couldn't say it any better than the extraordinary Clintons, my colleague, Speaker Hastings. But I can say that as a neophyte, you need people who you know you can trust. You need people who you know you can tell them what you're thinking, that you will not hear it echoed through the rest of the world, and they will tell you what they're thinking too. The whole reason would be to make your job easier. That's who Eliot was. Eliot understood that nobody had all the answers, but he also understood that if we worked together, we could get to the answers, and that people just need honesty, just need to know that there's someone who they can trust and bounce ideas off and get the wise answers. That's who Eliot was for me. He never, ever, ever imposed what he thought on me, but at any time I asked, what can I do? What should I do? He was there. It's rare, and among all of the other things that he did internationally and nationally, as Maya Angelou said, they may not remember what you do or what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. Eliot made us feel. Thank you, Pat. Thank you to the family. Let me turn it over to Jamal.
Thank you, Madam Leader. In the Senate, we act like a soca song. We follow the leader. To Pat and the family, our deepest condolences, and thank you for sharing Eliot with us. Mr. President, Madam First Lady, Secretary of State, Senator, you got so many jobs, you could have been one of my constituents. Thank you for your profound words and your leadership. I loved Eliot Engel so much I wore shoes today. Now, for those of you who don't get the joke, I wear sneakers 365 out of 364 days. But I wanted to make sure that I came properly prepared today to speak about somebody who I've known since I was a young person. Not a young elected official or an aspiring political, since I went to school with Julia at PS 83 and MS 181. So I've known the Engel family long before politics, and Pat knows I used to be a short little guy. Eliot's courage was mighty. He was someone who believed in the possibility of service. He was everywhere. If there was a block party with 5 people in 95-degree sweltering heat, when he didn't have a primary, Eliot Engel was there. Yes, he was there. He was someone that you can count on. From Rockland County to Riverdale, to Rombouts Avenue, he treated everybody exactly the same. He had the spirit and the heart of a true public servant. And a true public servant is someone that can serve people that they don't know the same that they would treat their best friend, their neighbor. Quite frankly, Eliot Engel treated people that he didn't know, sorry family, at times better than his own family. He had such a heart of service. And my Eliot Engel stories go back again to PS 83 and MS 181, but I can tell you when he was running, again, the sweltering heat, those times where he just cared. He stuck around from public housing to public service. That is an example that he set. That is an example that he set for me. To come from the Bronx and think it not robbery to be able to do something great for your community. It is my understanding that in the Jewish faith, there was a conversation or a thought process of 36 righteous individuals that walked the earth. And that we will never know who these 36 righteous individuals are, but they just do good deeds. And because of their good deeds, we continue to have a more perfect world. No, I'm not saying that I know Eliot was one. But what I am saying is that I've seen him in pictures with Nelson Mandela, the Dalai Lama, President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, President Obama, and all of us. And he treated each of us exactly the same, which is what the righteous 36 would do. Every generation has them, and we will never know who they are. But the beauty about believing in something greater than you are, greater than you can ever have, is that we also won't know. But we can believe in our heart. And in our heart, we know how great of a man he was in the physical form and how great of a man he remains in the spiritual form. May Eliot Engel rest eternally in peace, and may his memory be a continuous and ongoing blessing. God bless his legacy.
I was given a note that this congressional member is here. I don't know if she'll remember that she was on my TV show way, way back when she served in the Bronx. So let's say hello to Representative Yvette Clarke. Where is she? She's here somewhere. Also, we understand that a former congressional caseworker for Congressman Engel, Shirley Saunders, is here. She is the Deputy City Clerk in the Bronx Marriage Bureau. We're going to bring up representatives from the international community, all of whom were very important to Congressman Engel. This gentleman was an attorney and dear friend, Ravi Batra.
President Clinton, Secretary Hillary Clinton. Governor Hochul has come and gone, and she's got a train to run. I want to take a moment to basically share with you why Eliot Engel matters and why he'll continue to matter. So on behalf of my wife, Ronju, and Angie, who's here, to Pat, to Julia, to Jonathan and Philip, Of course, Philip likes to play with his hair a lot, which I'm very jealous of. But there wasn't a single conversation I ever had with Eliot where he didn't ask me about Randy or Angie or Neil, and where we didn't discuss Julia or Jonathan or Philip. And of course, Pat. Of course, Pat. And sometimes he'd complain that, he can't seem to decide anything at home. But I didn't play much of a therapist there because I have the same problem with Ranju. So I said, just join the club. And I am the president of the Abused Husbands Association. So, but why is Eliot relevant? President Clinton made America loved all over the world. That's why Eliot is important. Because when he went into as chairman or ranking member of a Foreign Affairs Committee, he made America loved again. I see Adriana Espaillat there. And of course, Greg Meeks is chairman because Eliot, when his time ran out, unfortunately, and it shouldn't have, he's a great American, and he wanted the same power that he had, the same heart that he had. He wanted Greg Meeks to continue that because he's the one who's got it. So Greg Meeks, to you. How much America is loved? Eliot Engel added that value to that. And we were so delighted to bring him back to the UN many, many times. But in December 5th, 2022, with the President of the General Assembly, Shaba Korosi, present, Faret Hoxha, then President of the UN Security Council, and right now Foreign Minister of Albania. In fact, I found out about Eliot's passing from Faret in in Albania, okay? He was present when over 70 countries, including the head of the EU, and of course Philip was there, but a lot more here. And I want to share with you how public service was the blood in Eliot Engel. Just like Jerry Nadler. Public service is the blood, and Carolyn Maloney is the blood of certain people. Yvette Clarke, of course. He walked in with a walker, Philip, you remember, barely able to get in. He's then surrounded by one ambassador after another, and they are not bilateral, and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton understands that meaning, because when you're bilateral, you can go all over the 50 states, unless you're Cuba or Russia or something, and then you get 17 miles or 25-mile radius. But the multilaterals are basically UN campus, so they cannot engage in domestic U.S. issues. So I want to tell you that Faret Hoxha, who is currently now the foreign minister, asked me to share with you, all of you, how there's a whole part of the world that if President Clinton hadn't acted, it wasn't Tony Blair, it's President Clinton. Okay, if he hadn't made NATO do what it did, there'd be a lot more genocides occurring. So, because, and I join in President Clinton's remarks, and I wish Eliot was alive today and be 40, but he literally saved hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and he gave dignity to so many, many people. So I want to tell you very, very shortly. You know, the Jewish faith teaches us, and I may not be Jewish, but if you're a New Yorker, you're Jewish. You know, justice you shall pursue, and Eliot pursued it through foreign policy. He was a lion of the House of Representatives, and he personified what Hillel said, which is treat others as you want to be treated, and he made that the foreign policy of the United States. And how could an American not be loved when you landed anywhere? That was Eliot. So I want to just show you, here's a picture. I don't know if you can see this, but of course Pat has, and the family have all this, but here is Faret Hoxha, then President of the Security Council, and he left the Security Council to be present when the award was being given to him, okay? And of course the President of the GA, all 193 countries. I'll even show you a picture of my wife, who's sitting right there, giving the award to Eliot. And it was just an amazing, amazing thing. Yesterday, I get a letter from the first deputy foreign minister who served bilaterally in Washington and is currently back here in the UN. He sent a letter to you, Pat, and to the family, in which I'm going to give you. He took the liberty of doing this because he has been bilateral. He says, I'm extending my term. So I will simply end by saying, Eliot was a lion of the House of Representatives. He made America greater. He made America better. He made America loved. And I'm going to miss him because he was my brother.
We obviously have an additional Congress member to recognize. I didn't see where he was sitting, but apparently Congressman Adriano Espaillat is here. Well, there he is, right behind me. Well, he happens to be my congressman, so there we go. Anyway, let's continue on. The Consul for Public Diplomacy at the Consulate General of Israel is Yuval Donio Gideon.
Good evening, everyone. Upon the request of Ms. Engel, I'll start by reading a letter from the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Dear Patricia, Julie, Jonathan, Philip, Sarah and I wish to extend our heartfelt condolences on the passing of your beloved husband and father, Eliot Engel. Eliot was a true steadfast friend of the State of Israel. He dedicated his life to public service, guided by a profound commitment to the values of democracy and freedom, as well as the unbreakable bond between the United States and Israel. Throughout his distinguished career in Congress, Eliot worked relentlessly to bolster the strategic alliance between our countries. He recognized our partnership as a pillar of mutual security, shared values, and regional stability. Eliot also believed in fostering unity and building bridges, ensuring that support for Israel remain a broad consensus across political spectrum in the United States. I will always cherish the memories of our many meetings where I came to know him. I experienced firsthand his integrity and genuine warmth. I hope that you can find comfort in the knowledge that Eliot left a remarkable legacy, which will continue to strengthen the friendship between our countries. Benjamin Netanyahu. It's hard to add to that, but I will say this. In general, Eliot manifested how agreements can be reached across the aisle to promote things which were of extremely importance. Throughout his tenure, he was not only one of the major pillars of the American-Israeli alliance, but he stood out as a proud Jew with a warm heart who protected and promoted the American interest while making sure that its close ally, Israel, remains safe and continues to be a democratic lighthouse in a troubled and dangerous area. Being a fierce advocate of human rights, he also acted frequently to assist other minorities in the Middle East. Last point that was mentioned by so many whom I spoke to is that he was a true mensch. For those of you who are not familiar with the word, it's a Yiddish word for a person known for its integrity, compassion, humility, and reliability. On behalf of the State of Israel, I wish to extend to you our condolences. He is missed in these days. May his memory be blessed.
We'll just move right along to another part of the world. The ambassador from the, if I hope I pronounce it right, the Blerem Reka Republic of Kosovo. He is a dear friend of Congressman Engels, who introduced the congressman to the cause of Kosovo. He's a leader of the Albanian American community. It is Harry Bajraktari. I hope I pronounced that right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, Governor Hochul left an urgent emergency to run the trains. Mrs. Engel, Engel family, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're gathered here tonight to remember and honor an American leader, to honor a great friend, Congressman Eliot Engel. For me, personally, this loss is deeply emotionally. He was like a big brother to me. Eliot Engel came from a humble beginning, from a poor Jewish family in the Bronx. He understood struggle. He understood persecution. He understood what happened when hate is ignored and when the world chooses silence over justice. Because of his own history, because of the history of the Jewish people, he believed deeply in one principle, that the worst tragedies in humanity happen when people remain silent. Eliot Engel was never silent. He did not enter politics for power, but for justice. He did not think about the next election, but the future generation. He chose public life to make a difference. His legacy is an inspiration to all future leaders of the United States and the democratic world. My friendship with Congressman Eliot Engel began 3 decades ago in 1989 in the Bronx. At that time, the Albanian American community in our cause was almost invisible in Washington, but Congressman Engel listened and wanted to learn more. His first visit to Kosovo in 1993, alongside with Congresswoman Sue Molinari, Congressman Bill Paxton, Congressman Peter King, and his chief of staff, John Calvelli. Since then, Congressman Engel was there again and again. When the ethnic Albanians in Kosovo were facing repression, discrimination, and later ethnic cleansing under the Serbian regime of Slobodan Milosevic. I will never forget in 1999 when Kosovo was on fire and Congressman Engel, together with Congresswoman Sue Kelly, wanted to visit Kosovo. At the border between Northern Macedonia and Kosovo, Milosevic regime refused to allow them to enter Kosovo because they feared what would they see. He said at the border, mark my words, today Milosevic is preventing us from entering Kosovo, but soon Kosovo will be free, and we will never allow Milosevic to set foot again in Kosovo. History proved him right. 1 year later, under the leadership of President Clinton in 1999, Kosovo became free, and Milosevic never again set foot in Kosovo. He died in The Hague as a war criminal. Thank you, President Clinton. Thank you very much. Thank you. Congressman Engel continued his mission even after Kosovo's declared independence on February 17, 2008. His dream was to see Kosovo part of NATO, just like Albania, Northern Macedonia, and Montenegro. I also want to emphasize Congressman Engel's visit to Kosovo in 2019 as chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee for the inauguration ceremony of the new great building, the U.S. Embassy in Kosovo. The man who raised the American flag of the United States Information Agency in Pristina in 1996, which was first diplomatic presence in occupied Kosovo, was now cutting the ribbon of the U.S. Embassy in free and independent Kosovo. Wow, what a moment. What a success. Stories like this with Congressman Engel never end. But I must say, Congressman Engel lives forever in our hearts, the Albanian people, because leaders like Eliot Engel do not belong to one nation. They belong to humanity. On behalf of the Albanians worldwide, I express our eternal gratitude, and the Albanian people will never forget him. Kosovo today is free and independent and democratic state, the most pro-American state in the world. Albania is a democratic country, a proud member of NATO. Through his work, Congressman Eliot Engel helped advance the right of the Albanians in Northern Macedonia, Montenegro, and the Preševa Valley. When we look back, we see historic achievement that would never have been possible without the United States of America and leaders like President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, and Congressman Engel. To his beloved wife, Mrs. Pat Engel, to his family, to all who loved him, please know this: the Albanian people share your grief, and as long as there is an Albanian family anywhere in the world, the name of Eliot Engel will be remembered and respected with gratitude and love. May God bless his soul. May God bless the friendship between American people and the Albanian people. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to admit that I combined two introductions. This is Harry Badroktari, who is a dear friend, was a dear friend of Congressman Engel and a leader of the Albanian American community.
Thank you.
I got it right. Okay, now the next. Hey, look, in the Bronx, we're straight and we're honest. We tell you the truth, right? That's how I've made my living all these years. The next is Ambassador Blarim Rika of the Republic of Kosovo. Okay, I got it. I got it right.
President Clinton, State Secretary Madeleine Albright, honorable family of Eliot Engel, Madam Pat. Today here at Lehman College in the Bronx, we are honoring Congressman Eliot Engel, one of the greatest American supporters of the Kosovo cause. Whatever is said about Congressman Engel is still not enough. No words are enough to thank him for 3 decades of his great work for Kosovo in the US Congress. Therefore, today, I will not deliver a speech. Today, I will pay tribute, a tribute to this emblematic American political figure and to this great friend of Albanians. From my very first meeting with Congressman Eliot Engel in March 1995, in his office at the US Congress, and a year later in Kosovo, at the opening of ceremony of American Information Office in Pristina in 1996, he promised that would indeed happen. The liberation of Kosovo, its independence, and the expulsion of Milosevic's occupying army out of Kosovo. And that is exactly what happened in 1999. So, allow me to conclude with eternal gratitude to this voice of Kosovo in Washington at the time when the voice of occupied Kosovo could not be reached at US Congress. Rest in peace, Congressman Eliot Engel. Kosovo will always remember you. Thank you, Eliot Engel. Thank you, United States of America, what all you did for Kosovo. Thank you.
All right, moving right along, let's bring on some elected officials who have served with Congressman Engel. I will start off, I saw him sitting here. It is Representative Jerry Nadler.
As a longtime friend of Pat and Eliot's, it is really gratifying to me to see so many people here and such people to honor Eliot's memory. I first met Eliot in early 1977 when I led a group of members of my West Side Democratic Club up to Co-op City to help Eliot in challenging the Democratic machine candidate for a midterm assembly vacancy. Eliot, running on the Liberal Party line, did the impossible and defeated both the Democratic and Republican candidates. He then joined me in the Assembly, and we became great friends. We sat next to each other in the Assembly for 11 years, until he was elected to Congress, where I joined him a few years later. We visited each other's families. He may not remember this, but I remember picking up Philip one day until his head accidentally hit the chandelier in my living room. Our families shared many occasions together. Pat, Joyce, Eliot, and I would go out to dinner and occasionally to banquets and picnics at the White House when it was controlled by Democratic presidents. We always enjoyed each other's company. Eliot and I traveled to South America and Mexico together on a fact-finding mission when he was the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee and I was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We went to Israel together in 2012 and visited the ancient Jewish cemetery on the Mount of Olives. While we were there to bring attention to the vandalism and desecration at the cemetery, someone started throwing rocks at us. Fortunately, they weren't very good aims. They missed, and no one was injured. Eliot persisted and called for increased security at the site to make it safe for visitors. The point is, Eliot and I have been through a lot together over many and many years in New York, in Washington, and around the world. He was always warm and friendly to all. Anyone who knew him can attest to that. And he was a loyal friend. In 2015, after Prime Minister Netanyahu came to Congress and urged us to vote against President Obama's JCPOA agreement with Iran, and every Jewish organization in the country came out against it. And I voted for it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And Eliot voted against it because he thought that was the right thing to do. And I was excoriated over my vote. Eliot came out and said, Jerry's Zionist credentials cannot be questioned. And he came to my aid at a very trying time. So it was a heavy heart. It is with a heavy heart. I think I said, I don't know if I read this already. He was always warm and friendly to all. Anyone who knew him can attest to that. So it's with a heavy heart that I mourn the loss of my dear friend and former colleague, Eliot Engel. Over the course of a lifetime in public service, including more than 3 decades in Congress, Eliot was a tireless champion for the people of the Bronx, Westchester, and Rockland in particular, and for the country as a whole. Throughout his career, his hard work and his fierce advocacy improved the lives of countless people in the United States and across the world. As a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, he was a leader on health care, energy, and consumer protection issues. Eliot had perhaps his greatest impact, as you have heard, as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, which he led with integrity and experience, lending strength and credibility to America's role in the world. Among his many accomplishments, again, as you have heard, he played a crucial role in protecting the people of Kosovo and combating child labor. Most of all, he will be remembered as an unwavering friend to Israel. As the Congressional Jewish Caucus noted upon his passing, Eliot Engel, quote, is among the pantheon of champions of our people who have served with distinction in the halls of Congress, close quote. His legacy of service to New York, to the nation, and to the world lives on through the issues he fought for and the lives he touched. To Pat and the other members of his family, my profound condolences. May Eliot's memory be a blessing.
It is hard for those of us in the Bronx to not notice that our next speaker is the representative of the only Bronx congressional district, and that, of course, means it's Congressman Richie Torres.
Good evening. You know, Eliot was rightly described as a mensch, and I'm going to use another Yiddish word. His love of America, his love of Israel, his love of Kosovo, he felt it in his kishkas. And I never had the honor of serving with Eliot, but he's a giant on whose shoulders I proudly stand. Just 18 years ago, Kosovo became the youngest democracy on earth, and its greatest champion was Eliot Engel. 250 years ago, America became the youngest democracy on earth. And as I think about America's 250th anniversary, I'm left wondering, who is American democracy's greatest champion in its youth? In other words, who was America's Eliot Engel? One historical parallel is Marquis de Lafayette, whose name appears in places across the United States. When I traveled to Kosovo in 2022 with Harry Bajraktari, I saw physical tributes to Eliot Engel literally everywhere. A major road named after Eliot Engel. A postage stamp featuring the likeness of Eliot Engel. The rooftop of a restaurant prominently displaying a portrait of Eliot Engel. Needless to say, the people of Kosovo have no subtlety when it comes to expressing their enduring love and gratitude for their greatest friend. I met families in Kosovo who, with tears in their eyes, told me that without Eliot Engel, without President Clinton, they would not be alive today. And neither would their children, their grandchildren, and all the generations that will follow. I'm partnering with Congressman Greg Meeks to advance legislation that would rename the U.S. Embassy in Kosovo after the great Eliot Engel. And I'm proud that we were able to convince every member of the New York delegation, both Democrats and Republicans, in a rare moment of bipartisanship, to sponsor legislation that would rename the post office in Riverdale after Eliot Engel. Which will not necessarily improve service delivery, but the legacy of Eliot Engel is measured not merely in laws passed, hearings held, or dollars appropriated. It's measured in something more profound: lives saved, a nation born. Eliot's legacy includes the saving of hundreds of thousands of lives and the birth of the world's youngest democracy. If that is not evidence of a life well lived, I'm not sure what is. May his memory be a blessing.
Thank you, Congressman. We'll continue with Congress members. Let's bring on Representative George Latimer.
Pat, and to the family, we grieve with you, we love you, we think of you as we think of him. I have the great honor of serving in the seat in Congress that Eliot Engel served in, and I can't imagine that in whatever time I have in that seat, I will have a fraction of the accomplishments that he has, a fraction. But as my colleague Richie Torres said, and my other colleagues in the room, Jerry Nadler and Greg Meeks, Nydia Velasquez, who had to leave, Adriano Espaillat, we saw in Eliot something that we've lost in Washington. I know that the President and President Clinton and Secretary Clinton sees this. The words of the book of Micah ring in my mind. What is required of thee? Three things: to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. Not a lot of humble walking going on in Washington these days, I'm afraid to say. I may be a freshman at the tender age of 72, but I guess that's when I got here. That's my age. But not a lot of humble walking. But that was Eliot Engel. And to do justice and to love mercy and to support those things in a fashion that is, as one of the earlier speakers said, very unexpectedly so. Because most people think, and I know I'm sure Carolyn heard this during her years in Congress and others, they expect us to be arrogant and rapacious, and we're all doing insider trading, and we have people at our beck and call to do whatever little bad thing that we want. And there's enough examples of it in the world to say that you can't say it doesn't happen. But not Eliot Engel. We all knew Eliot as decent and honorable in all of his dealings. I did not serve with him in Congress, but I campaigned next to him. And any of us who are in politics know that when you spend a certain amount of time with somebody else in politics, you start to get to know them. You have those dead moments before the next group of people come to you where you're just talking about life. And I stood with him at the Fleetwood Railroad Station on the border of Mount Vernon and Yonkers in 2018 when he was in a primary. Primary he won very comfortably. And we chatted during that period of time. And I realized that he is the living embodiment of what Micah expected us to do. That we do justice and we love mercy, and we walk humbly with thy Lord. I learned a long time ago, when I served in the State Assembly, I served with Carl Hastie and Adriano and some others in this room, is that once you leave the body, your name goes off the scoreboard. And if you're accustomed to looking for your name in alphabetical order and you go back to the chamber, it's not there. And it's not ever going to be there again. So the monuments and what Richie Torres has done is utterly wonderful in the two items that he alluded to. But the monument, Pat, for Eliot is in our hearts. That every day that we continue to serve, we remember how Eliot served. And we try our best to be like Eliot was. God bless you.
You know, her name came up twice, so we certainly should recognize former Representative Carolyn Maloney. Thank you. You know, this, in the Bronx, we all know that we've just completed 17 days of Bronx Week. And so maybe the tiredest person in the room is the borough president of the Bronx, because this, Madam Borough President, is the tail end of the 17 days. I know it felt like 70. But we've just had a wonderful time celebrating all of the borough of the Bronx. So it is my pleasure to introduce the #1 citizen of the Bronx, the Honorable Vanessa Gibson.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening, family. 17 days, and this is how I sound. We have had so many incredible events these last 2 weeks to celebrate the great borough of the Bronx, but I had to take this moment of reflection to be here to celebrate the life, the legacy, and the labor of the Honorable Congressman Eliot Engel. First, truly giving honor to God, who is the head of my life. Mr. President, Madam Secretary, our Governor, Speaker Hasty, Senate Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, all of our elected officials, so many of our distinguished guests who are here from the state of Israel, and to the broader community here in the Bronx and Westchester and Rockland County, everyone who truly has an Eliot Engel story. I thank you all for being here today. To Eliot's beloved queen, his wife, Pat, to his beloved children, Julia, Jonathan, and Philip, his beloved sister, Dory, his grandchildren, his family, friends, community, and everyone here today. We pause to honor a life well lived, a legacy, impact, service, sacrifice of Congressman Eliot Engel, a great leader whose profound impact continues to shape our borough, our state, and this nation. For more than 3 decades, Eliot served the people of the Bronx, Westchester, Rockland County with unwavering dedication, with humility and heart. He was a public servant who believed deeply in the power of government to uplift communities and expand opportunity. Throughout his tenure as a member of Congress, he championed so many issues that mattered most to everyday families and everyday Americans. Access to quality education, affordable health care, meaningful investments in the neighborhoods that he represented. As chair of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, he played a pivotal role on the global stage, guided by a steadfast commitment to democracy and human rights. But beyond his legislative accomplishments, those who knew Eliot remember his kindness, his accessibility, and his genuine love for his constituents. It has been said he always showed up. Congressman Eliot Engel was outside. He showed up for the people that he represented. He never, ever forgot where he came from, and he never stopped fighting for this borough. My personal story of Eliot Engel is he always reminded me, at the time I was in the New York State Assembly and I represented the High Bridge community in the West Bronx. He said, "Assemblywoman, you know I went to PS 11 in High Bridge." And I said, "You did?" He says, "Yes, I have so many stories, and I always want to make time to go back and talk to the children of PS 11, known as the High Bridge School on Ogden Avenue." And I said, "Congressman, of course, let's make time so that you can visit the children of PS 11, because that's where he got his start. And he recognized that God had prepared him for such a moment to come back and teach the next generation of students. I love the fact that he loved his community, but he also extended himself to the entire borough of the Bronx. His legacy is one of commitment, consistency, dedication, determination, exceptional service, integrity, and a lifelong devotion to the community that trusted him, that relied on him to show up and be their voice every day on the front lines. Today we honor not just the leader that he was, but the example and the standard that he leaves behind. His footprints are big, they're enormous, but someone will continue to follow in the legacy that he leaves behind. It is a reminder, family, that public service at its best is rooted in compassion, in principle, in values, and in integrity. May we carry forward the values that Eliot Engel embodied, his spirit. May the work that he did always speak for him generations later. I extend my love and my condolences to his entire family, to the community, to all of the staff members, including Chief of Staff John Calvelli. We love you, John, and thank you. All the memories that you have. I've been a Chief of Staff, so I know it's not easy. And to all the staff members that worked in his congressional office, we thank you for your service. May God bless his memory, and may God bless his family. And most importantly, let us continue to remember his work and honor his legacy, never forget his sacrifice, and do everything we can to live out the ideals and the values and the principles of what Congressman Eliot Engel stood for. May his memory always be a blessing. God bless you. To God be the glory.
I told the borough president to now go home and finally get some rest. She's been out there, and I was at many of the events, and she was always at all of them. This next speaker, when I heard who he was and where he's from, my eyebrows went up. It is the Honorable John Tanner, who is a U.S. Congress member from Tennessee in the 8th Congressional District in Tennessee. He's here. He entered Congress with Eliot in 1988. Ladies and gentlemen, Representative John Tanner.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief, but with my accent, it may take a while. Mr. President, Madam Secretary, Pat, Julia, Jono, Philip, Betty Ann and I are delighted to be here just to pay our respects to a friend that I met on my very first day and his very first day when we were in Congress. It was in December of 1988, and back in those days, all the members, freshmen, newly elected members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, went to the Kennedy School in Boston at Harvard for a week of orientation. Well, it so happened that when I was in the Navy, I had a friend in the Navy who was the assistant U.S. attorney in Boston. When we got there, I called him to just catch up, and he said, I've got to go out of town, but I can't see you for lunch, but I happen to have 4 tickets to the Celtics game tomorrow night. Would you like to have them? And I said, yes, of course. So I got Eliot and Don Payne from Newark, New Jersey, and Mike Parker, who was from Brookhaven, Mississippi, who talked like I did, and we could communicate. So we go to the box office, Will Call window at the Boston Garden. I go up and to the window, and I made a mistake. I said, hello. And the guy looked at me like I was crazy. Hello? What do you want? I said, my name is John Tanner, and I'm have a friend who was supposed to leave, and he's going, what? And he looked at me very quizzically. It gets worse. Mike Parker steps in. Brookhaven, Mississippi, he says, what he said was he's John Tanner from, and this guy now is bewildered. Who are these people and where'd they come from? Eliot came to our rescue. Eliot steps in and said, his name's Tanner, give him his damn tickets. The guy, well, why didn't you say so to begin with? And then when we got to Washington, my wife Betty Ann and I became friends with Eliot and Pat. And it wasn't been there long, and Pat, they called us and said, we want you to come up to New York. They lived in Co-op City, and Pat said, we'll have baked ziti. I asked Betty Ann, I said, I don't know any animals that are called ziti. Is this, you reckon it's a goat? Anyway, we came up, and he said, we'll go to the Mets game. So we came up, and we had baked ziti, and it was good. And we got to the Mets game in the bottom of the 8th inning. We got to the ball game in the bottom of the 8th. I'm not going to repeat everything that I've heard that you've heard because all of it is true. And Eliot was all of the things and all of the good things that everybody has said about him. And we were lifelong friends from the day one when we first met. I think what everybody is saying, what underlines a lot of this, is Eliot was a bridge builder. He built bridges in the Congress. He built bridges around the world. And so my tribute to Eliot will be the Bridge Builder poem. It goes like this. An old man going a lone highway came at evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide, no means to cross to the other side. But the old man crossed in the twilight dim. The raging stream held no fear for him. But he stopped when safe on the other side and built a bridge at eventide. A fellow pilgrim passing near asked, "Old man, why waste your strength with building here? Your journey will end at the close of day. You'll never again pass this way. Why waste your strength with building here?" The builder lifted his old gray head. "Good friend, in the path I've come," he said, "there follows after me today a youth who too must pass this way. This stream which has meant naught to me, to that lad may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. My friend, I'm building this bridge for him." Eliot Engel was a bridge builder, and we were all lucky to him.
Thank you so much, Congressman Tanner, and of course, welcome to the Boogie Down. We love having you here. This is who we are, and what you heard from Eliot in that little anecdote he told, that's who we are. We'll get it done. Anyway, let's move right along. I don't want to take any more time. Westchester County Executive is Ken Jenkins. Where is Ken Jenkins? County Executive.
All right, so good evening, everyone. First, let's start by offering again our sincere condolences to the Engel family, to Pat, Julia, Jonathan, and Philip, and all of the family members and extended family members that served, because there's so many chiefs of staff, I'll get in trouble if I say all of their names, and we're not going to do that. I first met Eliot Engel about 35 years ago when I was a young whippersnapper. I know y'all can't believe that. When I was 29 years old, and I was the head of the Yonkers branch of the NAACP. And Eliot was our congressman. And he took the work that we were doing, and he always stood by us. I remember the legacy, the loyalty, the humility. He never, ever forgot where he came from. I know there's a picture, and I showed this when I came to Shiva, the Shiva call, and I'm looking at Philip because I was looking at the face, and both him and Eliot, I was scared because I just saw Eliot in that face. He had a bigger mustache that day. I know he might have trimmed it down for today. But Eliot always stood by. He never forgot. He was hardworking. He continued to make sure that everyone felt the same, as everyone has said so far. My one story for Eliot Engel leads back to what the rabbi started with right from the beginning. Because all through those races, no matter what things happen, because on the NAACP side, there's one thing, but then I did a little bit of political work as far as being the secretary of the Westchester County Democratic Committee and some other things along the way. And in every time I stood next to Eliot Engel, I knew that he had done so many things for so many people. And I think at the end, some people forgot about those. So that one story I want to tell you before I sit down is the story about ceiling rents. And you would say, well, what's so important about that? You know, he's helping to create countries. But he took the same kind of effort and energy that he did for Kosovo to do ceiling rents in the public housing projects in the city of Yonkers, and to make sure that people could get to a place where they could lift themselves up to move on. Those particular efforts are still in place. When we look around today, we look around and you see so many people that have forgotten what the job is, forgotten that it was about public service, forgotten that it's about answering every call, forgotten about it's about treating every human being as kindly as the next. And even though I was born in the Bronx and moved to Westchester, we tried to get in Co-op City, we couldn't. We always knew that Eliot Engel was there for us. So for everyone, and to the entire family, to everyone that hears, that his memory will always be a blessing. We all look at these photos behind us, and I talked to Pat right in the beginning. She said, I got tears in my eye just watching the pictures. But I got tears in my eye watching the pictures because I knew every one of those pictures and every one of those things are only a quarter what Eliot Engel has done for all of us. May his memory continue to be a blessing.
Our next speaker served many of the same constituents that Congressman Engel did. And it will be my pleasure to bring up the assembly member from the 81st Assembly District. He's my assembly member, Jeff Dinowitz.
Thank you. Wow, the room really is filled. So, this was the most on-time starting Engel event in all the years. Amazing. So we all know that Eliot was a great congressman. He was the longest serving congressman in the history of the Bronx. Longest serving ever. And he rose to the chairmanship of one of the top committees in Congress, and he was a major player not only in the Bronx and Westchester and in Rockland, but also he was on the national stage and the world stage. And he did all the things he did without the yelling and the screaming and the nastiness and the disgustingness that takes place now from the people on this end of the political spectrum and on that end of the political spectrum. He brought people together and he got things done without yelling and screaming. So I met Eliot in 1972, so you can do the math on that. He was running as an alternate delegate to the Democratic National Convention that year for George McGovern, and I was a volunteer in the McGovern campaign. So he was actually the first elected official or future elected official that I ever met. Eliot and I kind of came from the same type of working class backgrounds. Our grandparents came from Eastern Europe. We grew up in the Bronx. Both of us lived for parts of our lives in NYCHA public housing. We both graduated from Lehman College right here, a few years apart. Now, when you come from humble beginnings, I think it kind of gives you a greater appreciation for the struggles that other people go through. It gives you empathy. And I saw over the years how much he cared. Every single person, I mean, when we were at an event, he would stop and talk to everybody. Even if we had to go to the next thing, he always gave everybody his personal time. He listened to their problems. He really, really cared about everybody. Now, Eliot and Pat and Sylvia and I, we all became friends in the 70s, in the 1970s, before any of us were married. Sylvia and I got married in 1978, and Eliot and Pat in 1979. 80, shortly after us. Julia and my daughter Cara, they were born a year apart. Julia came first, then came Cara. Then we had our first sons. I only had one. Eric came along, and then Jonathan a year later, and then later on Philip came. Our families and our kids grew up together, and we've been friends for all these many years. Now, other people talk about Eliot's, international achievements. I just wanted to talk a little bit about his political history. Eliot ran for Democratic district leader in Co-op City in 1974, and it was a hotly contested, it was kind of a nasty election. And on the day of the election, his father was, I guess the word is, assaulted by somebody from the opposition, and Eliot pretty much ended his campaigning that day to take care of his father, to bring him to get medical attention. Eliot lost that race by a little bit, but he came back in 1976. He ran and won for district leader in Co-op City. And then an opportunity arose, and he ran in a special election for the state assembly in 1977. And on March 1st, 77, he was elected to the assembly off the Democratic line. He won the election by 103 votes. That's close. And he won election after election subsequently. I ran his campaign in 1982 when he had another hotly contested election. It was the same time my daughter Cara was born. We ran the campaign out of a trailer on Ash Loop. That was the campaign headquarters. I guess they didn't rent out to political campaigns the stores there. And so she probably doesn't remember it when she was a couple of weeks old, but Cara spent a lot of her first few weeks in that campaign trailer. But she was very happy when Eliot won the election. Now, he ran for Congress in 1988, and he not only won that election, but he won every election every 2 years until 2020. I was happy to campaign for him. In fact, going back to 77, Sylvia and I were knocking on doors in Co-op City in that special election, and we participated in his elections because we knew how terrific he was for our community. Little did we know back in '88 that he would really become an international player in terms of doing great things for human rights, for supporting the state of Israel, and for so many other things that have been mentioned today. So in 1994, I ran for the assembly, and like Eliot, I won by this much. Actually, I won by much greater than he did. I won by 132 votes. I would not have won that election without his support. There is just no question about it. When an election is close, a lot of things come together towards the victory. But Eliot's endorsement and everything else that he did that year is why I won. Well, I probably was a good candidate, but without him, I would not have won. Now, Eliot, he kind of functioned like he was sort of in a different time zone. You know, everybody else was asleep by the time he was still going for the day. He might occasionally be late for things. Well, maybe always. So typically what would happen is I would get a phone call from him. It was usually about a minute after I fell asleep. And then we were on the phone for, you know, an hour or so, going past midnight. And we talked about everything, you know, political stuff, family stuff, you name it. I remember one time, I guess it had to be in probably January of 2017, maybe February. I guess February. You know, Eliot every year, as we know, liked to shake the hand of the president at the State of the Union address. And that was really a great thing. I know some people didn't like that. It was really wonderful. His constituents appreciated it. But in 2017, that's when he was elected. And so he says to me, you know, I don't think I want to shake his hand. He's like horrible. And I said, well, I think you ought to go there and sit there and, I don't know, maybe accidentally stick your foot out. And he didn't think that was a good idea. So I said, well, in the alternative, I agree with you. I do not think you should shake the hand of Donald Trump. And boy, was that the right decision. Boy, was that the right decision. The number of conversations we had like that, the conversation we had before the Iraq War, for example, so many other things, it's just having had the ability to be kind of sort of on the inside of what's going on around the world. I consider myself very fortunate, but I really consider myself fortunate because of our friendship that our families had and still have after all these decades. And our families have remained close. And now Eliot, and it's been said, Eliot has never forgotten who he was or where he came from as a Bronxite and as a Jewish American. Never forgot. He really did epitomize the American dream. What he achieved, a working class kid from the Bronx who rose to become one of the most powerful members of Congress. How many people can say that? How many people can really say that they've experienced that? No one ever gave anything to him. Everything he achieved, it's because of hard work and because of his own decency and caring. And with all that he accomplished around the world, I'll always just remember Eliot as a friend. And I consider myself and our families very lucky. He was a real mensch. So I'm very honored to be here today, and may his memory be a blessing.
Well, the next speaker, speaking of families, it makes it very easy to introduce the next speaker. He is the council member from the 11th Council District in the Bronx. You'll recognize the last name from the last speaker. It is Council Member Eric Dinowitz.
That must have been Kenny. Well, good evening, everyone. I think it's really, a hard moment in a lot of our lives, but it is uplifting to hear from everyone who is here and to see so many friends and family here. Sitting in the aisle with so many Congress members and dignitaries here and a president, I felt a little like Eliot at the State of the Union, just a little bit. I think almost everyone who spoke got to work with Eliot as an elected official, as a foreign dignitary. I never had that honor and privilege, really. But I knew him differently. I mean, I don't remember a time when I didn't know Eliot. He's known me, as you heard. He and my father and Pat and my mom were close friends, so he knew me since I was a fetus. So well before. So it's a long time, yes, my whole life. And so we grew up calling him Daddy Eliot, and of course Pat, Mommy Pat, and his kids called my parents Mommy Sylvia and Daddy Jeffrey. And so that was who he was to me long before he was a district leader or an assemblyman, or when he made that lateral move to Congress from assembly to Congress. Some people say ascension, I don't. And as I'm, think back to like my childhood growing up with Eliot, going to Rye Playland and to the Westchester County Fair, to the baseball game, which was probably a Mets game, or just going to his house in Co-op City, and thinking back to those conversations, I realized how much I learned from him even at such a young age, because you don't, when you're 5, 6, you're not always talking to adults, but you listen. My kids like to eavesdrop on our conversations, and it always seemed to me he got really upset when he was talking about the way people were mistreated, and he got really passionate when he was talking about the way to treat people. I mean, and I learned a lot from him. Not just thinking back to that, but I did learn about how to treat people, including Philip. He explicitly told me and Jono, Philip is not a toy. We didn't hit his head on a chandelier, so I think we got one up on you, Congressman. No, we were playing with him. We just left. It was in the house. It was fine. I learned. I once introduced him as the ranking member of the Foreign Relations Committee in the House, and he goes, No. It's the Foreign Affairs Committee. You know how you know? Because senators have relations, and representatives have affairs. So I did. It was his. I didn't say. He said it. I didn't say. But I also learned. I think what he learned from his mom, that you fight for people. He told a story once about how he was out with his mom when he was very young, and there was a department store where the workers were on strike, and Soroy said to him, he's like, "We're not going in there. We're going to support the workers." And I think he took that value with him to Congress and to the Assembly, and just throughout his life. He always fought for what was right. He fought for people, and he treated everyone with respect and dignity, especially his chiefs of staff. I see John and Bill here, who I know in turn took great care of him during his time in Congress. And that it's okay to work with people that you don't always agree with. That maybe you'll agree with them on 10% of things, but those 10% of things, you can improve fuel efficiency standards in our country, or you can prevent child labor practices in the cocoa industry, and you can do it without demonizing others. And you do it by doing the work, not through showmanship, not through being louder than the person next to you. I would say, of course, I think the most important thing I learned from him is that when you walk in a room with Congressman Engel, Eliot would say, Daddy Eliot would say, "I'm Congressman Engel. I'm on the list." Whether or not he had an invitation or they knew who he was on the list. It is a line I have used in this very institution to get parking. Don't clap, now you're all going to use it. I'm going to get in trouble. Of all his accomplishments, I think, of course, is who he was as a husband and a father. And Philip, of course, not a toy. You will find a hairstyle you like, I promise. Jono, who is, I think, my most long-standing friend. The days of playing action figures are now things we do with my kids, and the video games and the coin collecting are things we now share with my kids. Jono signed my ketubah at my wedding. And of course, Julia, who my kids call her fake aunt, but I would call their second mother. Because the amount of care and time and generosity she gives to our family and to my wife, Tamar, is beyond measure. And it is something I know that Mommy Pat and Daddy Eliot instilled in her, and she now is so giving of herself to me and my family. And that's, to me, the most important legacy that he leaves behind. And as someone who never served with him, I have to ask myself, I don't know where my political career is headed. I'm in my second term in the city council. But I do think about the lessons I learned from Eliot, and I think about what kind of Democrat I want to be. At a time when I think our party is in a bit of turmoil, I think there's a lot of conflict, a lot of demonization. I ask myself how I want to comport myself and the type of Democrat that I want to be. And like Eliot, I want my North Star to be the people that I serve. And like Eliot, I want my job to be about the work and the people I serve, not about likes or being louder than the person next to you. And like Eliot, I want to work with anyone, despite disagreements on other things, because that is how he did it, and it was always in service of our country. And I want to be a Democrat like Eliot, who is a good family man and instilled in his children the values of community service and family and friendship. In other words, I don't want to be a progressive Democrat. I don't want to be a moderate Democrat. I want to be an Eliot Engel Democrat. May his memory be a blessing.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Folks, we appreciate your kind attention. We're right near the end. We just have a couple of speakers left. Let's bring on a 60-year friend of Eliot Engel. He's a former Democratic State Committee member. It is Lou Goldstein.
Okay, thank you. Eliot, these words are to you. Knowing you for 57 years was an honor. You used to say to me that I was going to outlive you and others. Unfortunately, I did. I miss you. I miss the years that you were always there in support of me, my identity, and the identity of those who were put aside by society. Be those who were gay like me. Be those who are disabled like me, senior citizens, Albanians like Harry and others. When I came out, Eliot supported me. In the 90s, when Congress passed Defense of Marriage Act, and the president really didn't want to, but signed it, Eliot was one of 51 Democrats to vote no. He made a statement. in favor of all. I remember a conversation I had with Eliot where I said to him, "Hey, Eliot, I told Sal Castorina, who was a community leader from a conservative area, head of an association, that I was gay. Eliot looked after me. Why did you say that? That wasn't a good idea." Sal didn't care. Eliot was there for me. There was a time where as I was describing my being gay, and I started to explain to him the difference between those who are gay, who are tops or bottoms. And Eliot said, "You don't have to explain it. I got what you meant as long as you're happy and enjoying." Eliot, you're still with us. You're still with me. I love your family, Pat, Julia, Jonathan, and Philip, named after, of course, your father, Philip Engel, who I knew, and your mom, Saroy, who I also knew. So, Eliot, wherever you're hearing what everybody here said about you, let me say, till we meet again, thank you.
I always call him the irrepressible Lou Goldstein. And now you know why I do call him that. He's been my friend, too, for many, many years. Let's bring on Eliot's chief of staff for 20 years. He's been a friend of mine for I don't know how many years, many. It's Bill Weitz.
Thank you, everybody. I feel like following Lou is Eliot's joke to me that I will not be the one to explain tops and bottoms, though that might have been in the Chief of Staff's role. I want to dispel one rumor today that we did not pick this date because it was Met Yankee weekend. And I'm sure Eliot is not laughing at me that the Mets came back and won today. We don't talk a lot about his Met fandom because he was a Bronx kid, but he used to go on ABC radio every once in a while when the Yankees were on that station, and would always be late because the game would run late, and the host would always be like, "Oh, Congressman, we're sorry for the delay, but your Yankees won." And Eliot would be like, yes, the Yankees won. And I'd be yelling at the radio, "He's not a Yankee fan, he's a Met fan." I want to thank Jeff for keeping him on the phone till midnight, because that meant he called me from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. every night. All just part of the job of the Chief of Staff. I spent 20 years working for Eliot and longer knowing him, but you really get to know someone when you're in the car 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, running from one event to another. And I will keep those stories to myself because I swore to him I would keep that to the grave. So I will not share what we talked about in the car all those times. What's in the car stays in the car. So, I do want to point out, though, just as we're coming to the close of this program, we talked a lot about his legacy and the things that he accomplished in legislation and work across the aisle and international work and national work. But there's one thing that he did that affected all of us, both in D.C. and here in New York. He brought together a staff that was committed and dedicated to the work that he wanted to do. He taught us service, taught us loyalty, taught us ethics, taught us how to be there to help people and serve in public life. And There's a number of staff people who have joined us today and are here. And today they spread out around the world helping people in different capacities, advocating for rights, advocating for agencies, advocating for government and different places. And I would like to just ask them all to stand. When we talk about legacy, here's Eliot Engel's legacy. Thank you.
Well, let's see. He ran the Washington office from 1988 to 2000. He worked for him in the Assembly. I, of course, know him for his work with our Bronx Zoo and the society, and he's just a wonderful guy. It is John Calvelli.
Charlie Rangel had a great line, everything's been said but not by me. So I am the last speaker before we hear from the family. And I took a few moments to write it down because I'm not sure I'm going to get through it. How do I sum up 44 years of friendship? How do you share a lifetime of memories in 2 or 3 minutes? He took a chance on a young kid who wanted to work in politics. He was my older brother. He stood at my wedding. He was always late. He loved Christmas Eve with my family because he loved the 7 fishes tradition. Apologies, Rabbi, he loved shrimp. He loved people and being in the company of friends. How could I sum up a career that spans more than 5 decades? The political battles fought, the colleagues met along the way, many of them here with us this evening, or the experiences we shared through the years. So I'm going to share one story that encapsulates Eliot for me. In the summer of 1989, Eliot was a new member of Congress, and he had already distinguished himself being elected president of his freshman class. We organized for that class their first visit to the Middle East. He led a delegation to Israel that met with Yitzhak Shamir and Shimon Peres. We left Israel and went to Egypt, where we met with President Mubarak to discuss ways to implement a comprehensive peace plan. Sound familiar? President Mubarak organized a visit to Luxor, and we both were excited to see these ancient wonders. As we exited the plane, we realized that there were 40 Egyptian soldiers lined up to welcome him. He, of course, was carrying a Co-op City shopping bag that held an extra sweater. He turned to me and said, "Please hold the shopping bag." It seemed a tad more respectable as he inspected the troops. As we walked past these Egyptian soldiers, he turned to me and said, "Not bad for a Jewish kid from the Bronx." Eliot then left to go to the north of Ireland, and we eventually met up in Rome where we would visit with the Pope. As we walked to our hotel and past the U.S. Embassy, we found a group of Soviet Jews on a hunger strike. They, along with 10,000 others, had been denied entrance to the United States. As you may recall, Jews and evangelical Christians that were able to escape the clutches of communism were given the right to apply for a U.S. immigrant visa. Italy allowed them the opportunity to wait for the visa in their country. The U.S. government had unilaterally stopped their visa eligibility, and they were now stuck in Italy, specifically a small beach town called Ladispoli, a few miles outside of Rome. These people had the opportunity to go to Israel, but they were bent on coming to America. And in classic Eliot fashion, we went to Ladispoli to meet with the leaders of the community and gather the facts. As we sat with them, the question in the air, do you want to come to America? Do you want to go to Israel? The woman to my left, who was from Leningrad, quickly responded, I want to go to Scarsdale. Not sure she made it to Scarsdale, and hopefully if she's watching this, please let us know. But Eliot did succeed in getting all those people in La Dispoli to the United States. As a matter of fact, one of them ended up becoming a legislator in the New York State Assembly. That action was illustrative of a career that was committed to fighting for those in need, whether it was in the north of Ireland, in Albania, in Kosovo, in Israel, the Bronx, Westchester, or Rockland. And how fitting that we would lose Eliot as we celebrate our 250th anniversary. He loved this country. He had an innate sense of fairness and a fundamental belief in the goodness of this country. He never looked at someone as a Democrat or a Republican, a liberal or a conservative. You were a human being. And he spent every day trying to live up to this faith that he had in this nation and his responsibility to God that we need to leave the world better than we found it. Rest easy, Eliot. You did your part. It is now our collective responsibility to continue your work. I love you, my brother, and I miss you every day. Thank you.
Folks, we are right up at the end of near the end of our program. I just want to thank you. It's been my honor to be even asked to do this this evening, and I'm assuming everybody else found it incredibly inspirational, and that's what we need to take with us from tonight, and of course from the life and the work of Eliot Engel. And so, to conclude, I will introduce Pat Engel, the wife, and I don't know if Julia, Jonathan, and Philip want to come and stand with her, but it'll be up to Mom to make that decision. That's not my call. Ladies and gentlemen, the Engel family.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. On behalf of our entire, I'm going to make this as quick as possible because we're running late, Engel style. On behalf of the entire family, the Engels and the Kaplans, I want to thank you all for being here today and for joining us. I see so many people in this room who loved my husband. It brings all of us, immense comfort to see you here. I want to add a few words of praise here for my son, Jonathan. Eliot was ill during the last 6 years of his life, but not as bad as the last year. And that last year, when it became difficult, my son, Jonathan, took my husband into his home and cared for him. And I want to thank my son, John, publicly for doing that. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your stories and for helping us to celebrate an incredible life. It really was an incredible life. Thank you for sharing in our sorrow, but most importantly for sharing in the joy that Eliot brought to us. We are truly grateful to have you in our lives. And I hope this doesn't end our relationship. The phone is our connection. You are all members of our family. I want to give a special thanks to Bill Weitz, John Calvelli, and Lehman College and BronxNet for making today possible. I also want to express my deepest appreciation to everyone who has reached out, who paid a Shiva call, who sent flowers, who provided meals, and over these past weeks, your kindness has kept us going during this difficult time. I want to give a special thank you to Randy Martos, wherever she is. Riverside Memorial, David Alpert, and the Hebrew Home, David Pomerantz. You supported me and my family throughout this whole ordeal, and I appreciate it. We all appreciate it very much. Eliot loved this community, and seeing you all here honors his memory beautifully. We are honored by the presence of everyone who came to join us today, and also for those who stuck with us online. Thank you for being with us. I want to also thank my two nephews. You're not going to believe this. J.T. Ennis has been traveling from Tallarico in Texas to us in the Bronx while we're going through this, and he is helping with that campaign. So thank you. I also want to thank my nephew, Rabbi David Kaplan, who officiated at the gravesite at the services there. It is an amazing thing to watch the next generation come up and function at adult levels. And it's, you know, when you've held them when they're babies, and then you see them, oh my God, this is a man, this is a woman, this is, what happened? Where did those years go? This is what we're lucky enough to find. I know that we all miss Eliot, and Eliot would have loved to see all of you and all of the next generation pick up the pieces and move on and function. And I thank you again all from the bottom of my heart, and I thank you on behalf of my family. Thank you.